recording? All right. Here, let me get my stuff out of the way. Hold on. All right. Uh, I, of course, am Wolfman Sam here with my buddy John. I'd like to
What's up?
consider this podcast officially what I like to call the Children of the Night podcast. And John, just tell them a bit about your channel.
Well, my YouTube channel is dedicated to film reviews, and I'm also trying to work on like other like creativity and other like possibility for like film projects possibly too. And I also do some like fitness videos for fun.
Cool, very cool. One of the
Yeah.
things you wanted to talk about was we were going to talk about the Universal monster movies and just some of our favorites.
Yes. Yes. Actually, it's funny because I've been recently rewatching some of the Mummy Universal monsters because I'm doing
Right.
like a retrospect review on them in the future and for this upcoming October for Halloween. My favorite of the Universal monsters is the Frankenstein films.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like Frankenstein, if I were to jump in really quick, but Frankenstein was probably one of the first movies to like get a sequel. Like
Yes.
Bride of Frankenstein was like the first direct sequel, and at the very beginning of that movie, Bride of Frankenstein, you literally had Mary Shelley telling the next tale
Yeah.
of that of that story, and that was so
It's
groundbreaking.
it's
And
between like I'm sorry, it's between
yeah,
like
yeah,
that
go
and
go on.
Bride. It's between that and Bride of Frankenstein, and like literally like they're like the two dynamic duo of like watching them back to back as if like a 2 hour film because it's like the complete Mary Shelley novel.
Right. Yeah. Um, and yeah, and one of the things I really miss in horror films is just that gothic imagery. I miss
Same.
great, like gothic style graveyards and the music and the
Yeah.
old school lightning and stuff. And there was just a caliber of actors that were just untouched. Look at Bela
Yeah.
Lugosi. It was funny. I was watching, not to paraphrase here, but I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and he had on Rob Zombie, and
Yes.
they were all talking about like how Bella was so groundbreaking. Like nobody talked like Bella, and he just had this
No.
machismo about him. Like all the girls loved him and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like you just
Actually,
don't have that caliber of actors anymore. And
no, you don't.
that's why, like, one of my favorite Universal movies is actually The Invisible Man. I love me
Really.
some Claude Rains,
Yeah, me too.
and
That's a great one.
and there was there's something about his style that's just so good. Like he's got one of those voices where you just hang on every word. And as a
Yes.
Batman fan, I, without a doubt, believe that he was one of the main inspirations for Mark Hamill's Joker from the
Mark
animated
Mark
series.
Mark Mark Hamill said that he was inspired from Claude Rains' voice, is what like was an inspiration for his Joker voice.
Yeah, if you listen to even if you listen to his laugh, you're just like that's
Making
proto
the
Joker.
connections.
That's proto Hamill
Yes.
Joker right there.
Yes.
And I don't know, like one of the guys I listened to, Razor Fist, actually brought this up about black and white. Now I like color. I like
Me
color
too.
movies. There's nothing wrong with color movies, but he is right when he said that with black and white you get sort of a grit.
You
You're
do.
you're more focused on a grit, and if there's color, like like let's say like the color red or something like that,
Right.
you're focused on that color red, or like it's totally different. Not to say that like all films should be black and white, but I do
No.
think if you're going to do it as a stylistic choice, it really changes the feel of a certain film.
I think with also with those like classic Universal monster black and white films, it shows how like think like the Frankenstein story and also Dracula, they're all like show examples of like everything was like in black and white in those stories. And especially
Yeah,
you have like man that creates monster or like Dracula, an
yeah,
evil vampire, and also the Wolf Man. He's
yeah,
cursed by
yeah. Kurt. And that's the other thing. The Wolfman is probably my second favorite
Mine too.
Universal monster
Mine too.
because I just love. Was it Lon Chaney Jr.?
Yes, it was Junior.
Yeah, yeah, I love him too. He just has a sympathetic everyman quality about him.
Yes,
Uh,
that's what makes it
did
so
you ever?
great. Like a great
Yeah,
horror dramas is what makes
yeah.
those Universal monsters unique and special.
Did you ever see the film Spider Baby with him?
No, no, I never saw
It's
that.
him and Sid Haig.
Okay,
It's one of Sid Haig's like first. He was like super young.
really
It's a great underrated flick. It's
interesting.
definitely what inspired if you're a Rob Zombie fan, which I know you're not, but
I
it's
mean,
definitely what
not
inspired House of Thousand Corpses for sure.
okay. I'll have to
Like
check into it. It's called Spider Baby.
Spider Baby, yeah. You can
Oh,
find it if you got like a Fire Stick that can, or if you know how to get to like Solar Movies or something like that. Check it out. It's a
Let's look into it.
weird movie, but it's a good one. It's like a
I've seen
and
weird.
of course Lon Chaney is fantastic in it.
Right.
But yeah,
But
yeah, check it
but he,
out.
but it's very sad how like Lon Chaney was a great like Universal monster actor, but it's another like tragic story like Bela Lugosi.
Right. Yeah, you know that's the thing too. Is a lot of the actors and stuff like that. Even actors that made it, like Veronica Lake, they always seem to have like their enemies. Like Veronica Lake was kind of well, Marilyn Monroe was competing with Veronica Lake.
Really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, yeah. She was. I mean, nothing against Marilyn Monroe. I know people like Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah,
Um, but she was kind of the Scarlett Johansson of her time. You know, she
I could
was
see
kind of
that.
taking what other actresses were doing at the time, and because she was pretty, she was like, okay, I can do this. I'll do this with my
Yeah.
hair, even though Veronica Lake made the invented the Victory Roll hairstyle during the war times. But
Well, especially how like
but
also
I'm not putting down Marilyn.
well, especially
I haven't seen enough of her films to really judge for myself.
I've
But
seen Some Like It Hot,
did
and
you ever see the
I didn't
Misfits at all? Like
I don't
I
think
know people talk about the Misfits a lot,
not only
especially
I didn't
Misfit
see that one.
fans.
I haven't seen a lot of Marilyn Monroe. I mean, I don't mind her that much. I'm just not like really like obsessed or like really like into her
Yeah,
films. Like
I know people love who
yeah,
absolutely love Marilyn Monroe. Me, I'm
yeah.
more of a Veronica Lake guy.
For me,
You
I'm
know,
more of a Natalie Wood fanatic than
yeah,
a Marilyn
yeah,
Monroe.
yeah. Um, what else? Here's the thing too is like it's horror films like that or films in general, because like I'm noticing a shift now. I think streaming is great, like because it's like a video store in the
True, but more
palm of your hands
more of
eventually.
more of a digital than
Yeah,
like a
pretty
video.
much. It's like a digital video store. But there's a
Yeah,
big caveat, and that is, um, and it doesn't even have to be about political correctness. Gonna, I'm not a political guy,
me
but
neither.
but I think certain films are gonna be lost to time or gonna be changed. Like
True.
you're now. I hope to never ever see this in my lifetime, but you're not going to have your Dirty Harrys, your Cobras, your
Uh,
super important films because somebody says, "Oh, well, that's offensive. We can't have that.
right.
We
I
can't
hope that
have
doesn't
that.
happen.
That's a relic of their, like." And that's one of the reasons why I'm so for physical media. Now I know people can't own every film in existence. They can
True.
only own a few of their favorites.
Well,
But
I only own what I really love and stuff, and what
right.
really like
Same
grabs
same
me.
here. I really would love to be like Randall from Clerks, and that one scene where he's on his knees and
Yeah,
he's got all
right.
the videotapes and all the like, because
Except you don't.
that's my dream is to
Except you don't have to
own
worry
all
about
the
a bunch
stuff
of like.
that
Except you don't have to
I
worry about a bunch
like
of custom.
on
You don't.
physical, because I don't want people coming in and changing it or not being able to find it. You
Right.
know. But
Well,
that's my opinion on digital. I really think people should um, try to find the hard copies. I mean, look at Star Wars for an example.
Oh my
To
god! I don't even get me
find
started on that one.
the original theatrical version of the original three, it's impossible. It's
When I was a
impossible to find. You gotta go on like VH. You gotta find the VHS copy
yes,
from like
yes.
1980. You know,
Actually,
before they started.
1995. Before that, I think they were on like beta or something at the time.
Right,
Before
right.
they,
But I'm just saying, like what happened to Star Wars could also happen. Now, I hope I'm wrong. I
I
absolutely
hope
hope
so
I'm wrong.
too.
I would love to be like completely wrong, but I also know how. And like I said, it's a very small group of people. You know,
When I when, when
crazy
I
people.
when I was a little kid, looking back, well, like when they came out with the special editions, it didn't like. As a little kid, you don't think about the little things like that, the differences, until like it wasn't
Yeah.
until like maybe like
Well, that's the thing I was kind of thinking about as I was watching. I forget if it was like Above the Law or if I was watching an action
oh, that's a
flick.
good
I've been
movie.
on an like an 80s action, 90s action kind of
Yeah.
kick. I've been getting my daily dose of testosterone every weekend. Um,
Ugh.
yeah, that's the thing I was thinking about is like, and also James Rolfe, Angry Video Game Nerd, did a great video on this.
Yes.
And
He
he's
did a
kind of
video
like
on.
he kind of likes both, and I kind of agree. There's room for both for streaming and physical, but I don't think
Yeah.
physical should go away.
No, I always still like love physical no matter what, especially like even like with books and
Yeah, yeah.
I still have
Same
books
thing with
and
books,
comic
because
books.
people could just change it or say that it never existed.
Right,
You
that's
know,
true.
and
That's true. It's like this is a piece of history right here somewhere we're
yeah,
down 20
piece of
years from
history.
now.
But somebody will look at
Yeah.
that and go, I don't like that film, or that film offends me, or stuff
Right.
like that. You know,
I
yeah.
I feel like
It's totally
nothing really
true.
offends me that much. I guess as a kid growing up, you didn't think about this stuff. You just thought like, wow, these are
Yeah, and well,
spectacular
that's the
films
whole
and
thing I was trying to go into is James's video really made me think back to being a kid and being just non-cynical,
right.
non-judgmental.
Yes.
Same thing with
Yes.
music. You know,
Yes.
it's just like rock was rock. There was no genre in my mind when I was a kid. Rock was rock. Horror movies were horror movies. There were no
Yeah.
subgenres. Action
Yes.
movies were action movies. There was no
Right.
judgmental, and I try to keep that mindset, but especially with modern day Hollywood, it's so
True.
hard not to be
Well, especially what's happened like in recent
super
events with
jaded.
like the Weinstein cases or like
Oh
Scarlett
yeah.
Johansson and
Don't get me started.
yeah.
Dude, I've been mentally singing that song from Public Enemy. You ever listen to Public Enemy? A little bit of Public Enemy. They
I
have
don't
a
think I'm
song called
familiar with
"Burn
their
Hollywood
band.
Burn."
Oh yes, yes. I think my dad showed me that
Right,
song a while ago. Yeah,
and
yeah, 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 yeah,
and I've
yeah.
been, dude, that song is like that song is my song to Hollywood right
Right.
now. You know, I I and here's the thing that I think about Hollywood is I think Hollywood is going to die, but the good news is independent film companies are going to rise.
That could
And
probably raise ours.
those are the people that are going to be making the films that everybody's going to be watching.
Right.
You know, like the next RoboCop. I want an 80s action horror movie. I want an 80s renaissance for film.
That'd be
I
awesome.
want people to maybe not go back to theaters. I think theaters are going the way of malls.
That's the sad part because of COVID. The theaters are dying because of
That's
that.
it. COVID changed a lot of
Oh,
things for
it
people.
did. I
And
still haven't seen the new like Spider-Man film that came out in the theaters, and
yeah, yeah.
the last time I went to the theaters was last year twice. I
I'm
saw
trying to think.
Conjuring
Oh
3
yeah,
and
the
Forever
last time I went
Purge.
to the theaters was actually fairly recently, like a couple months ago. I blindly because our friend Pete, for those that are listening, we
Right.
have a friend Pete,
Right.
you know, who his staff member, his sort of helper for those that are listening to the whole thing, wanted to go see it. It was a Free Guy with Ryan Reynolds. It wasn't bad.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It wasn't
I didn't
bad.
see that.
It wasn't bad.
Well,
I knew absolutely nothing
Right.
about it.
I think that's the hardest thing about since COVID. I like really have like lost before COVID, I always used to know like what was new, but then when COVID happened, that
Yeah,
threw me off,
yeah.
and I
Well,
still
here's
haven't
the
seen the new
thing.
Suicide
Yeah,
Squad or.
yeah,
And also at the time, I also really was like also moving at the time because I recently moved upstate New York. That was also another big distraction too, and a big obstacle. And yeah, I just have not been to the movie theaters that much. I still don't know like what the recent. I'm still like far behind with things I still haven't caught up with yet, and also like personal, like
right,
personal life stuff. Things get in the way, and you got a life outside of movies.
right, exactly. Yeah, that's a factor, and also for me, I've become so jaded with movies. With
Yeah,
like with modern movies, and
right.
it's like when I see a trailer for something, I'm just like I'm not interested, and
I'm kind
or if I
of
see something I like, I just stream it.
right. I don't. I do like modern. It's just I don't know. For some reason I've been just going through this phase where I just rather like would watch a classic like black and white film over
Right.
something that was
Well, that's
mainstream.
that's that's something I also do.
Yeah.
If
I still enjoy mainstream film. I don't know. It's just something about like a black and white film that's so like nostalgic. That gives me so
Yeah,
much magic.
yeah, or you go back to
Like,
like an '80s action film, and you
yeah,
you
that's
just you there's something about there's something about it. I truly have a love for. I really think the '80s was really the last decade where we had like a culture.
which I could see that in a way.
Nothing
Especially there's
against
so
the
many great.
'90s. Listen, people like the films of the '90s, and there are some good films in the '90s, but that
There
is my
were,
personal opinion.
but I feel like the 2000s is where it's like okay, now they're just like big
Right,
blockbuster
right,
mainstreams, and it's all about the money rather than trying. I mean, there's still some good films in the
right,
2000s like Lord of the
yeah,
Rings, The Dark Knight, and Iron
right,
Man, and
yeah,
also trying to think what else was good. I mean, Casino Royale was pretty good.
yeah, yeah. I got a couple films that I like from the 2000s too, and
Yeah.
like I said, I'm a big old Rob Zombie fan. I know people that
Right. Which I understand.
hate Rob Zombie.
Well, I
Uh,
mean, I don't. I think he's a cool, like, chill. I do love listening to him on Joe Rogan's podcast or interviews. And I also
yeah,
watched his MTV Cribs, like showing his house. I'm like, this guy is awesome. Like, he has like a cool, like, a crib of like, like
yeah,
his
he's
house.
definitely a guy I would love to just hang out with.
Yeah, he seemed like a cool
He just seems
dude
like
to
the
talk
all the
to.
most awesomest guy, like down to
Yes, I
earth
could
guy.
agree. Very
And his
humble and
wife, his wife seems sweet.
yeah, yeah. Despite how she plays great crazy psychopaths like in
She
Devil's
does. She
Reject.
does.
Yeah, she could have been a good Harley Quinn. I will give her that though.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. And here's the thing: like, as much as I like him, I don't know how. I don't even know if it's even really going to get off the ground. His Munsters remake. I don't know
I
how to feel about
might,
that.
I might
I'm a
I mean,
big old
seeing
Munster
photos.
fan,
Me too. I love the Munsters. I grew up on the Munsters.
and I know he is too. He he went as so far as to, you know, buy the car and write a song about it. That's what Dracula is about.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
car
yeah, yeah.
from the Munsters.
It's funny. I'm not a fan of it. I like his music, especially like when I work out. I like the song Dracula or what's that one he did where it had like a Caligari feel to it?
Was it Living Dead Girl?
Yes, that's a good one.
Yeah, yeah. No, he's got some good tracks.
He does. He
I like
does.
his music. I love his movies, but I like his
Right.
music.
Right.
And it's funny. Even if the song isn't good, I love the music video.
Right.
You
Right.
know.
Especially how like the music to Dracula is like awesome and
Yeah,
badass.
yeah, yeah. And I don't
The
know,
first time
but
I
that's
the first
that's my whole opinion on him.
the first time I heard that song was in The Matrix, the first film, like when Neo's at like a club.
I forgot that was part of the Matrix
Yes,
soundtrack.
because anytime I hear that song, I think about The Matrix because Follow the White Rabbit, and Neo
Right,
sees the White Rabbit, goes, "Okay, I'll go to the club," and then he goes, and they're playing
right,
Dracula. He's sitting there chilling, having a beer, and every other else is like dancing
right.
like animals. And
Yeah,
did you see
man.
the new Matrix movie?
No, I
I didn't see it
avoided it
either.
like the
No,
plague. I know people that like it.
I hear
Um,
mixed things about it, so it's hard to. I don't have an opinion yet till I
I
see
I
it.
I refuse to see it because I'm not a huge Matrix fan. I like the
Really,
first and the third one. I know people don't like the third one.
really.
I
I
like
mean,
the
I like.
first and the third one. The second one, I'm not a fan of, but
Okay, fair
I know
enough.
people that like it.
I like
But I
the
like the
first. The
first
first one's the
one and the
best.
third one. The third one gives it a nice conclusion, but looking back, it could have just been a one-off,
Well,
and it'd be
I was a
fine.
little I was a little kid when those films came out. I didn't really get the whole concept of like what they
Right.
meant
So
until
was
now as
I.
an
So was
adult.
I. You know.
As a kid, I was just like blown away with the action scenes. Like, wow, this is awesome! Like
So
badass
was I,
martial
and
arts.
it aged like wine. You know. Really, the
Yeah,
concept aged like wine nowadays. But it's really, I mean, again, I don't mean to get like political, but it all goes
that's okay.
back to 1984 and that whole concept,
Yeah, I could see that.
the
Yeah,
book of
not only that,
1984, and that
I
whole
mean,
like society against. I know the Wachowskis, or one of the Wachowskis, they broke up,
yeah.
and
Well,
they
now they're
were
the
saying they were
sisters.
all mad about like, oh, the right took the red pill. Here I am going to politics. I'm gonna try and stay away, but I'm just telling you what I
It's
know.
okay.
Um, you know, I'm probably gonna be setting these people, these to Amino. I have a Amino thing where it
Right.
has a great group of horror people, community kind of thing. And
Right,
I
right,
don't want
right.
to be like, oh, he's talking about politics. No, I'm just telling you what.
Well, in my YouTube videos, I'll mention like some like current like events that happened, not because I'm getting
Right, right.
political.
You know,
It's these
but
movies define what was going on in those time
yeah,
periods. Like here's an
yeah.
example.
Dark City. Dark City is another
I
one.
never saw it.
Dark City is basically, now I hadn't seen it, but from what I've seen from it, you know, because I like to watch a little preview of what they get
Right.
into, you know, with movies and stuff.
Not to interrupt you. I want to say like, here's an example. Like when you look at Night of the Living Dead, that really defines the time period, the '60s, and what was
Right,
going on with
right.
politics, assassinations, and civil rights.
Yeah,
You feel it feels like a found, even though it's not really. You would consider that a found footage today in some ways.
yeah. Or They Live in some.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's I can. When I first saw They Live, I didn't like it, but then watching it the second time, it's
You're
like
just like, oh my
it,
God, like,
it's relatable what happened in recent events with
yeah, yeah.
economic
Escape from New
crashes.
York is another one.
Yeah, I guess
Super,
yeah,
super
true.
relevant.
Right,
A
yes.
matter of
Especially
fact,
They Live.
I have a thing on my chat. You know, I chat with friends of mine, and
Right.
my nickname on the chat is Snake Plissken because
Nice. I love it.
I literally escaped from New York. Long story, but right before, long story short, for those that are listening, literally right before COVID hit, a month before COVID hit, I literally came to Florida, you know, to start a new life. You know,
Wow.
because things weren't working out for me in New York, and I
Gotcha.
literally pulled a Snake Plissken without even knowing. Without even knowing, I was gone. I was out of New York. I
That's
was
a
out of,
different.
you know,
But
upstate New York is where I
but here,
was.
here here's here's a funny story. Before COVID, I went to Florida in February to Disney World with my sister, my brother-in-law, my niece and nephew. Then a month later, you know, like after COVID got bad,
Right,
and
right, and you're just like, oh my God, like I literally got out in the nick of time.
yeah,
Like,
I went to Disney the right time because after when COVID got bad, people were like canceling their Disney trips, but
oh yeah,
they weren't getting their money back. It was
oh yeah,
ridiculous.
it was crazy, and
Yeah, it
my heart goes
was.
out to people, some of my friends on Long Island, you know, that are still on the island. That are just like, this place sucks. I'm like, dude, come to Florida. It's night and day.
Right.
It is the night. It's basically, with the exception of maybe a handful of people wearing, like literally a handful of people, maybe like 4% of people. It's basically 2019 all over again down here.
Right. Yeah, well, 2019, that was a bad year for me, but I'm not going to get into that right now in
Yeah,
today's
yeah.
podcast.
Um, yeah. Well, it was kind of a bad year for me, but I don't want to get into personal things because
Right.
this is going out to the public. You
Right.
know, I mean,
But
long story short, for those that want to know, it was during my whole breakup with the girl I was seeing.
right, I
You know,
understand. But you know, it's crazy. I had a girl that year. I dated a girl, and it was a bad breakup for me that year too. In
right?
some ways,
Yeah,
different.
it's
I
something
get
in
it.
the air, man.
Yeah.
Oh well, you know, there's
But
plenty of other fish in the sea.
the good news is like I got over that, even though it took a while, like anything else,
Yeah,
especially
and
when it's your first serious girl.
the good news, at least for me, we're still friends. You know,
That's good.
yeah. I don't hold any grudges. We didn't end
Well,
things.
unfortunately, for my personal, it was
Yeah,
very,
yeah.
very
I
personal.
know, I
We're
know,
not we're not friends to this day.
I
But
know.
anyway, going on.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry about that, but like I said, there's
It
plenty other
happens.
fish in the sea. For me,
Yeah,
moving to
well,
Florida was like the best thing. In
right.
hindsight, it was like, why didn't I
Let,
come
let's
here
let's
sooner?
like we said before with airplane. I picked the wrong time to sign up for eHarmony when COVID got bad.
Right, right,
I picked.
exactly. And it's like yeah. Hold on, I want to make sure we're
Oh yeah,
still recording real quick. Hold on. Yeah, we're still recording. Okay.
good, good.
All right.
Anyway, I
Just
guess.
wanted to be sure. I didn't want to be like, oh crap, it cut off or
So
whatever.
let's see. We've talked about Universal Monsters, physical media, and also. Oh yeah, I guess the one thing I want to touch upon how like recently I've been watching like Batman and Superman films and
Yeah,
from
yeah,
for my YouTube video for reviews, and it's been
yeah. Well,
a lot of
well,
fun.
yeah. Going back to like the Keaton era, I've always been a fan of the Keaton era.
Same.
It's just like it. Nothing against Nolan, but I totally agree. One of the guys I listen to, Razor Fist, going again. I'm basically plugging his channel. Okay, Razor Fist, the
Who is this guy?
Rageaholic. If you guys haven't
Razor
seen or
Fist?
heard
I've
this
never
guy,
heard of
check
him.
him out. Shameless plug, as he says. Uh,
Gotcha.
but one of the things he said was the Nolan films Gotham doesn't look like Gotham. Gotham
Well, that's
looks like
true. I could agree on that.
Chicago. Which,
That's a
looking at it, yeah, it kind of does look like Chicago. And nothing against Burton, but Burton captured Gotham
yeah.
and how
I
Gotham
could
was supposed to look.
I could agree that like Burton's Gotham was better than Nolan's Gotham City, but
Yeah,
that's just like yeah.
yeah. And it's so funny because it's like we went from Burton to Schumacher.
Actually, in my Batman Forever, and I don't remember which one I pointed it out. I mean, he wasn't the greatest director, Schumacher. He really was not a bad director. He had some pretty good films under his belt, like and
Yeah,
also
like
if you ever watched
on his horror side, 8
the
millimeter,
Lost
man.
Boy, oh that was I saw
Oh
that
my
2 years.
God,
It was
what a
crazy.
like
What a
not many films disturb me,
I was
but
disturbed by that
that
film.
did
That really
that did
that
was
really
like
got to me. I was like, I like when I saw it, I was like, oh my god, what the hell did
yeah
I just
yeah.
watch? It
It's
was
like
like I
it's
didn't know what
like
to make of it. It made me
yeah.
think: are we like? Is there like an underground world of like the dangers of
I don't want to know.
pornography? And
I don't
yeah, me
want to know.
neither. Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
want
want.
to
It's
know.
like I
Listen,
want to.
I
It's
look
like I
at
want to
Eyes
know, but at
Wide
the same
Shut,
time,
right? I look at Eyes
yeah,
Wide Shut like a Hollywood documentary now. Like it's
yes.
like
I tell people there's more to that film than pornography because it's really about the dangers of marriage, the dangers of
yeah, the
cults.
danger of basically going in too deep with all these corporate,
Yeah,
these
yeah,
big wigs, to
yes.
put it bluntly, and
Also how like no matter like this is a bit very heavy topic to say how like you have like this couple who think they're in love but it's like no matter what they're always still going to have like sexual fantasies about other
right,
people
and yeah.
sometimes.
Well, it's like watching a David Lynch film too.
I guess I could see it that I never thought
Yeah,
of it that even though
he's
despite it's
another
all
one
Kubrick.
that disturbs me, which it's a hard thing to do for those that
Eraser
don't know. To I think it's a hard thing to really disturb your audience too, but for me, it's very hard to do. It's like,
Eraserhead was messed up and
oh,
like oh
dude,
my
I was just
gosh.
about to. You read my mind. I was just about to talk about that. Eraserhead was the film that stayed with me.
Right,
I had to take a week, a mental break
right.
a week later to like just be like, what the hell did I just see?
It's
It's like I was in my chair like, what?
Here's a funny story that's a little bit off topic but still somewhat relatable. The movie Requiem for a Dream by Darren Aronofsky, that film that really got to me and disturbed me so much that I did like this. I mean, I wouldn't say that it was like the gayest thing I've ever done, but I had to put on a chick flick after
I
that.
mean, listen, whatever works,
Yeah,
right?
I,
Whatever works.
I needed because I needed. It was one of the few times I'm like, you know what? I need a lighthearted film for once.
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
What's that?
About that film. I don't think I'll personally ever see it. and that's not because like I'm not afraid of it or whatever.
That's okay.
It's
It's
I already know. You know when you know about that subject matter
yeah.
like too much that you're just like, I really don't need to see like a depressive film about like
Yeah, I could
the
understand that.
issues of drug
They don't
drug
even
use
show
in the drug
they don't even
industry and the
show it in the
corruption
movie.
because I
That's what
already
makes it
know about
great.
all that stuff.
Right.
You know.
Which I can understand that, especially how like I understood like how like death, we're all gonna die. That's a part of life. It's like, yeah, I don't really need to watch a movie about how like we already know we're gonna die in
Yeah,
life.
yeah, you know, and to get into that like depressive headspace, it's difficult mentally.
Right.
And I think that's down to the director. If the director feel that way, I think it's a sign of a good director.
Yes. Well,
You know,
Aronofsky is a very like interesting another like him and Kubrick, Lynch, they all like have interesting like heavy
yeah, and
subjects. They
they're
really dive deep
able
into the
to
psychology.
like I always stand by this. It's harder to disturb your audience than it is to frighten.
That I could
Frighten
agree with.
is like, you know, and this is why I stand by the whole fact that like horror films should not rely too much on jump scares. You know, I'm gonna share a story. I'm gonna share a story that happened recently. See, I had rewatched one of my favorite films, The Exorcist. My
Right.
dad had put it on, and I was like, "Oh, The Exorcist," and you know, my my sister and her friends were watching it, and they were like, "This is so boring. This is
Really?
yeah." They thought it was the most boring thing, and I'm like, "No, no, look, it gets good. It's get good." And it's
When
like,
here's I actually, it's funny. Like me with the extra, when I first saw it as a teenager, I thought of that film as like about exorcism. But when I got to college, one of my teachers said there's more to it than just exorcism. It's about like faith. How we see like Father Karras is like losing his faith with like
well,
the
yeah,
religion
yeah,
and church.
that is a point of it. But to continue with my story is, and
Sure,
this is, you know, it's not everybody, but it
true.
definitely the younger generation is so. Not to sound like an old man, I'm I'm almost 30, but you know I'm
So
still in
am
my
I. I'm gonna be
20s.
30. Yeah,
But
I'm gonna be 30
not to
next
sound
year.
like
But
an
go
old
on.
man, but the younger generation is conditioned to more the jump scare, fast pace, jump cut, you know,
Right,
kind of horror.
right,
They're not conditioned to that suspenseful, spiritual, you know, thing.
right.
And listen, everybody's got opinions. Opinions are like
True.
assholes, you know, as they say. You know, I'm
That's
just
the first time
saying,
I've ever heard that.
cause like you know, like every generation has its its own like taste. You know,
True,
my
true.
taste is either really old films, some new films. Everybody's got their own taste. You know,
It
and that's
varies for
why
me some days.
when like a couple weeks ago, and, you know, I always go on my Amino. I love the horror group I have on the Amino. I'm probably gonna put that on put this on there, and
Okay.
if anybody, you know, comments, you know, a big shout out to those guys. But
Right.
but you know, somebody had did a written review of like Lords of Salem, the Rob Zombie film, which I thought it was pretty good. But they're like, I fucking hate their words. I fucking hate Rob Zombie. Fuck Rob Zombie. You know, and I'm just like, you know, I could comment, but listen, people are entitled to their own opinions.
True.
You know, listen, I hate certain you know, like certain actors or directors. You know, like Scarlett Johansson. I'm not a big Scarlett Johansson fan, but I know
It
people that
depends.
love Scarlett Johansson.
I
You
don't like
know,
Amy
or
Schumer that
love
much.
Michael Bay or whatever.
Michael Bay. Well, Michael Bay depends. Like The Rock was good, but then other films after that, it's like, eh.
You know, I'm just saying people have their own tastes.
True.
You know, it's
True.
the same with music, anything. But you
Oh
know,
yeah,
that's why
it's
I'm
everything.
not like I'm not judgmental. I don't come you know I don't come on here and do
Right.
these kind of things and like, oh yeah, your film sucks and blah. No, no, I'm not that
No,
kind of guy.
it's not even worth like wasting your energy on
No,
that.
no. And you know, that's why whoever's watching this is like, you know, I don't really care what you're, you know, where you come from, as long as you're a good person. You
Yeah,
know,
exactly. Very humble, like
you
us. We're
know,
humble, nice
everybody's welcome.
guys.
Everybody's welcome to
Yes.
watch this. If this like
Yes.
inspires you, Or like, hey, you just see these couple guys, you're like, hey, I could do this. Go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
Go ahead and do it.
Go ahead. Go
ahead
for
and
it.
do it.
You can do it.
Again, I'm totally giving Razor Fist like this guy Razor Fist, the Rageaholic, like his own thing. I'm really but he's the source I'm pulling from is he said become the culture, and that's my message.
That's a great
to
one.
Become the culture, right? That's my message to all fans who want the politics and all the other BS out of their movies and whatever they like, and they just want the thing to be fun. They just want it to be fun. And I totally agree with that. Make things fun again.
Hey, I try to do the best I can with my YouTube videos.
Watching movies, listening to music, whatever. Comic books.
Me too.
I want comic books. This guy Eric July is starting his own comic book company, and it's
nice.
It's not political, and it's going back to the roots of comic books.
Right. That sounds awesome.
Wait. That's gonna be my next reading material for sure.
Right.
And going back to but that's my point. But going into comic books though, also, is for me, I've been going into a lot of the pulp, a lot of the real old school roots of comic books, like Doc Savage and the Shadow and the Phantom and the Rocketeer, some like those kind of guys, because they're like the roots.
I've heard of those, but I never really think I've read any of those comic books.
The Phantom and the Rocketeer are more newer guys, but if you want to know the roots and basically
there was also the movie
Batman literally. Now I say this as a Batman fan. I love me some Batman, but they literally plagiarized so much from the Shadow. It's embarrassing. They traced novels
because of the
illustrations from Shadow pulps and made them into Batman pulps. Made them into Batman comic books. I love me some Batman, but the Shadow is everything about Batman, but so much more cooler, and it's like Batman, and I don't want to say the Punisher, but it's
Punisher was way later in
comic perspective. Books. Yeah, it's kind of like that.
I mean, actually, no, it's funny. Yesterday, I was watching a video. I don't remember I think Mindy Comics or I don't remember the guy's name. He was like talking about the '89 Punisher film with Dolph Lundgren that came out.
Yeah, I actually like that film.
I haven't seen that since I was a teenager because I remember when.
Oh yeah, same here.
Because I didn't know anything about that. It's like my grandmother had that on a VHS. I don't know if even she knew what the Punisher was. I don't know why that was in her VHS tape collection. After when she passed away, we were getting rid of all the VHS tapes. I kept a few to the side, and that was one of them. Like, I'm curious to check this out, especially at the time I was very big on the Thomas Jane Punisher film at the time.
Right. That's actually one of my dad's favorite Punishers is the Thomas Jane. Whatever one had Travolta in it. Was it
Thomas Jane had Travolta. He was
Jane?
Howard Stant.
Yeah, that's my dad's favorite.
Right.
He loves Travolta in that movie.
Yeah.
And but I have to thank my dad. My dad was the sole reason why I like all this like 80s and old school stuff.
Same.
Is because you and me, we grew up with a lot of leftovers. A lot of VHS leftovers.
Yes.
If I could, I know you've heard this story before, but I'll tell this story for people that are listening.
For the viewers, go on.
One of my first my first R-rated movie was I was 10 years old. Was RoboCop and Terminator back to back.
Really?
I had a VHS tape, it was a VHS tape that my dad had of both of them. Terminator and RoboCop, and I didn't know anything about it. The cover looked cool.
For me, my first R-rated, it was between Terminator and like Rambo. And sorry, Mom and Dad, you have to hear this. That my grandparents were okay with letting me watch R-rated films.
Well, that's the thing too. Is my dad was, He didn't. He
The
didn't really.
secret's out.
He didn't really care as much. You know, it was RoboCop. That's how he looked at it. It's RoboCop. It's fine. It'll be fine. And I was fine. You know,
Despite the first
it was one
Terminator
of
film,
the.
that's
You know, not to put down Terminator. I like Terminator. Terminator is good, but I love me. I love me some RoboCop.
did you ever read
RoboCop for me took me back to being a kid every time I see it. But yeah,
did you ever,
to
did you ever,
finish the
did you ever,
story, I was 10 years old. I had watched RoboCop for the first time. You know, after Terminator. Terminator was good. Terminator was
yes.
like, okay, that was cool. But RoboCop was like, holy crap! Like my childhood was done. It had blood, boobs, everything
Yeah.
a growing boy needs. All his vitamins, all his vitamins, and it was just like, whoa! Like you know, like it blew my mind. And Peter Weller as Murphy or
Yeah.
RoboCop, if you prefer, was just awesome. You know, and
He was.
it was, you know, it's a movie I hold special to my heart. It really
That
is.
was
It's one of those
the
movies
first
that take me back to being a kid.
the first RoboCop film. That was the first time watching it as a little kid with my parents.
How
The
old?
scene like
How
what
old were you? Do you remember?
I think I was like maybe 10 or 11, around in between.
Yeah, so you basically my age.
Yeah. So as we're watching it, there's a scene like where the character who is the creator of RoboCop, Miguel Ferrero's character, he's got two models over and they're snorting cocaine, and my parents were like, "Don't you ever, 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 ever do." That was the first time I ever learned like what drugs were at that age.
Yeah, I forget which film had drugs in it. It might have been Bloodsport. Bloodsport was
Right.
another one I had seen around when I was 10.
I didn't see that
And
till I was like 17.
yeah, John Claude Van Damme. That was awesome.
Yeah.
That's an awesome
Yes.
movie.
Yes, it was.
It's also, for those that don't know, but maybe some do, was the movie that was one of the movies next to Big Trouble in Little China that inspired Mortal Kombat.
That's actually a one John Carpenter flick I've not seen yet. Big
Big
Trouble
Trouble
in
in Little
Chinatown.
China. It's
I haven't
good.
seen it.
It's good. It's weird, but it's good.
Yeah,
Um,
I love John Carpenter and Kurt Russell, especially. Me and my dad watched The Thing on 4K. That film is like awesome. The Thing.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There's certain films that uh, visually look stunning in these high
Right.
definition kind of formats. But yeah, going back to Bloodsport and the history of how Mortal Kombat got inspired. Mortal Kombat originally was supposed to be Bloodsport, the video game. Johnny
Really.
Cage was supposed to be Jean-Claude Van Damme. That's why he looks. If you played Mortal Kombat 1, he's got the red sash that Jean-Claude wore and the same tights, and it was supposed to be a Bloodsport game.
Right. Is that my theory on that? Could that reason why they maybe changed the title because of the word blood in it, worrying about like being a bad title for kids,
For
maybe
Mortal
for that?
Kombat,
Yeah.
maybe. Though I can guarantee somebody would probably pull up and say, "Oh yeah, there were tons of games or arcade games in the 80s that had blood in it, and it was no big deal." So
Right.
I don't know. I don't know. I was not alive, you know.
Me
I was
neither.
not alive in the 80s.
I always joke with people how like for someone who was not born in the 80s, I'm so like big on the culture, the music, the film because I grew up watching
Yeah.
80s movies, listening to the music,
Well,
and also watching like TV shows
yeah,
of the
and
80s.
here's the thing, too, and what's good about being born in the millennial generation, it's easy to obtain that stuff,
That's true. Yeah.
all that stuff.
I feel like in the early.
in the 80s, if like I was a kid, if I was a kid in the 80s, I wouldn't have half the stuff I have.
That's true. Yeah. Same.
I grew up, as a kid, you don't have much money if you're unless you're
No,
a rich
no,
kid.
you barely have anything.
And I would have to look up things in the phone book in the library, and
Yeah.
for those that don't know, that's what I've heard that you have to do in the 80s
I
from
think
my parents. But
I think for
know
me because
so much less stuff,
right.
you know.
I think for me, my dad was like basically the encyclopedia of what I know now in some ways
Yeah,
before like, the internet.
same thing with my parents. That's why I know so much about how things were, and I still don't know because I didn't live it. I
No, I
didn't live
did.
it. I
Like,
was a kid in the
or
millennial,
especially,
and I got a
or
lot of '90s, education
yes,
because
because I was
remember VHSs.
yes, that was like that was basically our streaming services or Disney
Yeah,
Plus.
yeah,
Like there's like these like memes you see on like Facebook or social media in general where like it's a photo of like all the Disney VHS tapes and they're saying this was our Disney Plus before.
right, yeah,
Like anytime I watch like something with my niece or nephew, they're like, "Oh, this movie's on Disney Plus or Amazon." I tell them when I was your age, we had VHS tapes or we
they
were lucky.
probably they. Well, I don't know, but they probably don't know what VHS is.
No, they
They
don't. They
probably have
don't know
no
what.
idea.
They have
They're
what giving
like,
me the look
what's
like.
what's VHS? Is that like a streaming service? Because like we were the last generation, and I forget who
Right.
it was. I think it was either Fallon or Kimmel. That now I don't like them. I don't like either of them, but I appreciated the skit of like he did a skit of like or Gen Z trying to figure out what VHS is. Somebody did. I
There's that.
don't know if it was him, but
I'm not
and
very big on
they had
reality
no idea.
shows.
They had no idea how to like you gotta rewind it. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you gotta rewind it. And dude, I remember recording X-Men Evolution off TV.
Right.
Remember when you used to record things
Yeah.
off
Yes,
the TV?
I do remember that. Is it
Staying
as a
up
little
late at
kid?
night. Oh, is the recorder on? You know,
As a
like
little kid,
stuff
as a
like
little
that.
kid, as a little kid, one of my sister's friends recorded X-Men on VHS tape, but the downside was only half of it was recorded. Then we had to go to
Right, and that
Blockbuster
was
to
the
rent it.
drawback, or you get
Yeah, it
like
was.
you get like the static,
Yeah,
or the
that was a pain
audio
in the ass.
wouldn't be synced up,
I,
right?
I, I hated that as a kid. It's like, oh, it means I had to like wait
Yeah,
desperately
you
to
had to
find
deal
out
with
what
all this
happened.
stuff and blah blah blah,
Yeah.
and it's like man, like time flies. But I tell you, my sister made me feel old one time. I told you this story, but for the people
Go
out
on, but
there,
I don't.
they don't
It
know.
doesn't.
They don't know
But
me.
go ahead.
But my sister made me feel old. For those that are on the millennial spectrum, grew up in the '90s, '80s, whatever, she came to me with a picture of a controller I had grown
Right.
up with, and it's and her words, she said, "What is this autistic controller?" And I was thrown off by the autistic. I was like, "Autistic controller?" I was like, what do you mean autistic controller? And it just shows it to me. It's an N64
I think she meant the word to say. I think she meant authentic is what the word is, not autistic.
No, she meant autistic as like
Okay.
well, I don't want to say stupid because I don't want people
Yeah,
being
yeah,
like,
yeah,
oh
right,
yeah,
right,
your
right.
sister's a racist. No. But that was her words, and I was like, she was like, how do you hold it? I'm like, no, you don't understand. You got to hold the middle N64 controllers. And it's just like my red beard got white. I just felt like old, like super old.
I feel old like whenever if I watch like old cartoons with my nephew, like oh my god, like
I feel
DuckTales
nostalgic with that.
Yeah,
old
same.
cartoons.
Yes.
I'm just like, what happened? What
Right.
happened? How did we
Right.
go from like X-Men the animated series to like
or Batman the animated series to
like Steven Universe? Even that's
Right.
I think that's done. Which
I don't really know like
watched it
recent
for
like
a
mainstream
spell.
cartoons.
I watched it for a spell, but there was one episode that was like creeped me out. It long story short, they were subliminally I can speak.
I think the only cartoons I
still
really
hear me?
watch are like stuff from the yeah I can still hear.
Okay.
The only
Because
cartoons I
knocked
still
out my
watch are from like
microphone.
that's okay. The only cartoons I still watch are like from like 80s or 90s or classical cartoons like
Right,
Looney
right.
Tunes.
Same
I
here,
don't like
same
watch
here.
mainstream like cartoons
Yeah.
that much.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I don't watch cable anymore. I watch
Right.
whatever I can find on my Fire Stick.
Right.
Whatever's all for free.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the thing. But yeah, in terms of Steven Universe, when I clocked out, they were doing this subliminal like pedophilia thing. It was like
In a kid.
yeah, in a kid show. Well, a kid show, right?
Right.
For kids, right?
All right, Doctor
Right,
Evil.
and they were like, it's difficult to. They were explaining fusion and how fusion works, but the way they were explaining it was like sexual. Was like
Damn.
to like explaining to kids what sex is, and they were like, to become one, you have to like do all this stuff, and it was like a sexual thing, and I was like, I clocked out. I was like, I was done. I was like, all right, I'm done.
If you look if you look back at like the '90s Batman cartoon, there were some like sexual jokes that were hinted, like
yeah, but
and
it's different.
In Mad Love, don't you want to rub your Harley?
Yeah, but that was but nobody was pushing pedophilia. Nobody was ever pushing.
Right, that's true. Yeah,
pedophilia
right.
in shows.
Right, that's true. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, you're right. Good point there.
But yeah, what else? What else? We talked about the importance of physical media.
What have
we talked about a little bit Universal.
What have we been watching like recently? Like, what have you been like watching like I mean, not just anything.
Recently,
it doesn't have to like. I'm not saying like recent film. Anything in general. Like here's an example.
Off the top of my head, I've been watching this series called Letterkenny.
Okay.
It's about Canadian rednecks and all the fights they get into. It's not a reality show. It's really funny.
Okay.
Check it out.
Right, gotcha.
But that's what I've been watching in terms of series. In terms of movies, I'm all over the place. Right. I've been watching a lot of 80s action movies. I just got done with Above the Law.
That's a good one.
What else? Shoot. I'm drawing a blank on the film on the other film I watched. Oh, Easy Rider.
Oh, I love Easy Rider. That's one of my favorite movies. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah, Easy Rider.
I love the soundtrack.
Just all Tango and Cash. Very recently, literally yesterday.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, Tango and Cash. Kurt Russell, Sylvester Stallone.
Right, nice.
Great movie. But I've been just catching up on 80s, 90s machismo mostly. Some horror films here and there.
Same. Like I said, recently I've been I literally like watched almost. I'm not Abbott and Costello meets Frankenstein. I've watched all the Universal Monster Mummy films, and first one a masterpiece. The sequels, okay, not.
Yeah.
They were hit or miss. The ending of the series, you can just tell they got lazy and we're like, we don't give a crap at this
that's
point.
how I feel about the Child's Play Chucky series.
Yeah, I gave up on Chucky.
I like Seed, but I like Seed because it's funny.
Right.
It's not. It won't scare you. It's not a horror film.
Right.
It's a comedy. It's a comedy with blood.
After Seed of Chucky, I didn't bother with the rest.
But
of it
after that, I saw Colt and I saw Curse.
I didn't see those. I saw the remake with Mark.
They weren't good. But I have to say, now I could be wrong, but they had Brad Dourif's daughter as one of the leads.
Oh yeah, she did.
And I'm excited for her career. I hope she goes to do like more horror films her own way.
Yeah,
and
that'd be
successful. Awesome. I'm excited. That gets me excited.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I felt the same way, and also in certain films, I kind of had to look back and I realized I didn't, even though I liked the film, what the sequel did to the franchise kind of changed it. Like, I guess you would call this a hot take. I know people like this film. I know people that love this film. I like this film. But Alien 2, what they did to the aliens, they made them
you mean Alien?
Too vulnerable.
You mean Aliens, the second
Aliens,
one.
Yeah. Alien 2.
Yes, I love Aliens. That's a great film.
Yeah. I like it, but I will agree, if I had to nitpick, they made the aliens themselves too vulnerable. Because remember, in the first one, you couldn't kill the thing.
No.
You were like, you were shooting flames at it. You couldn't kill the thing, and that made
No,
it
you
more
couldn't.
terrifying. But James
Oh, yeah.
Cameron came along and said, no, you could just shoot them.
Right. I don't understand like why Ridley Scott did not direct the sequel to Aliens
I don't know.
after
Maybe
that.
he was off doing. I'm trying to think. He probably was off doing Blade Runner at the time.
Yeah.
When
Sometimes I wonder maybe because
did anybody remember when Alien 2, whatever, came out?
Aliens came out in 86.
86. So
Yes.
Blade Runner was done because Blade Runner was 82.
82. Blade Runner was 82.
Yeah, that's a great film, Blade Runner.
I love Blade Runner.
Never should have been a sequel ever.
Sequel's alright. I mean, was it necessary? No, but it was.
No.
I enjoyed the second one. It was not great. I just enjoyed it for what it was.
I didn't bother to see it, But
when I saw it in the theater, it was like not even like crowded or anything. No, like the film was like that film was like not good in the marketing. It didn't make as much money as it would.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I really didn't bother to see it. I really didn't think it needed a sequel, but that's my opinion, But yeah, Blade Runner. But that's the other thing too. In terms of sci-fi, everything goes back to Blade Runner, like anime.
True.
Blade Runner.
Actually, even before Blade Runner, Metropolis goes back before Blade Runner.
Yes, you're absolutely right. But in terms of like modern sci-fi and cyberpunk, everything goes back to Blade Runner. Akira, Ghost in the Shell, like a lot of anime, a lot of Japanese stuff.
Was inspired from Blade Runner.
At Blade Runner and go, okay, this is the future of anime.
Right.
And I'm not a huge anime fan either. I could literally count.
It depends.
On, both my hands here.
I never really was that big on anime as a kid growing. I didn't watch much Pokemon or Yu-Gi-Oh or. I've seen some anime films.
I did, but it was also very new to me at the time. I was a kid,
Right. Because as a kid growing up, I was really more big on like comic books and like Batman than I was
more of a comic book guy too. I mean, now that I'm older, it's just I look at now. I know there's fans of anime. I know there's fans. I'm gonna be sending people that are gonna be like anime is the best thing in the whole world. How dare
you?
Here
we go.
This is just my opinion.
Go ahead.
Okay, it's not my favorite genre. It's not my favorite genre.
I don't hate it. I'm just not like big on it. I'm not like desperate to watch it all the time.
Like I said, I have my favorites. But
I did like that show. What was it? Death Note was pretty good.
Which one?
Death Note was pretty good. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah,
I enjoyed a lot.
Favorite anime, Yu Yu Hakusho, but
I haven't seen that. I don't know anything about that one.
Basically like detective spirit world, fights demons, all that stuff. It's pretty good.
But since here's what I want to talk about. I've been watching. I recently watched King Kong versus Godzilla. It was okay, not great. It was
the original. You talk about the original, right?
Oh no. This one.
Oh yeah, the new one.
The newest one.
I enjoyed the new one. I had to shut my brain off.
I like the effects. I like the effects, but I think they really were like lacking in the story and the characters is what they were lacking. Well, that's just it.
I knew going in that the story. Now I'm sure there's people that I'd be like, the story was awesome. What are you talking about? But for me, I knew the story was going to be garbage.
Yeah.
So I was just like, all right, time to go in the little kid mode, and I just want to see big giant monkey fight giant lizard. That's all I want. I'm imagining Godzilla action figure in this hand and King Kong action figure in that hand.
Yeah.
And I just want to go smash them together. The only thing that would make it better is if like the soundtrack was like I don't know, some power metal or something like that.
Right.
Yngwie Malmsteen.
My dad said that the soundtrack to this film was very like weird and like what is stuff that like why would you add this in a King Kong Godzilla film?
Yeah, you need like metal. Give me metal. I want, and not like that industrial new wub kind of metal. Like I'm talking classic, like power metal.
Yes,
give me
I can agree on that.
Give me that.
Well, because I mean I wasn't expecting this film to be like anything a masterpiece or an Oscar film. I just wanted to sit back, relax, and watch a big, big giant monsters fighting each other.
It's what I like to call a junk food movie, where
Yeah.
you go into it going, all right, I don't expect this to be a masterpiece, but I'm gonna enjoy this.
Right. But let's just say I'm glad that neither I have to make this joke. At least their mothers were not named Martha.
Oh yeah, Martha.
What? Why did you
Batman,
say that
super.
name?
Oh man, Batman v Superman, so bad. I'm sorry.
I
I
mean,
know people are like the director's cut. You know, fucking
I liked it, but I'm not saying
Zack
it was
Snyder and
better.
shit. You know.
I liked Ben Affleck. He was a good Batman. Just the film itself, like it wasn't there. It was
Yeah.
poorly written. It was
Yeah.
Zack Snyder is just,
You
I
know,
don't know.
DC,
He really,
but you know, DC and Marvel, their problem is they can't get the politics out of the movies. And
Yeah.
that's just Hollywood films
Well,
in general. If they
no.
put all that politic BS and all the messaging and just give us, they already have a template for Justice League, the cartoon. Just give us the.
Well, my biggest issue too was that like he was trying like too hard to catch up to like what Marvel was doing around that time,
It was
because
obvious they were trying to be like Guardians and stuff, and it was like,
yeah,
it's like, what are
they
you
just
doing? What are you doing?
if he had focused on one thing in that film, Batman and Superman, that would have been more than enough, and save the rest for later.
You have comic books to go off of. You've got the Justice League cartoon. You've got you can even do the Frank Miller version, which they didn't animated. They animated that. They made that an animated movie.
Well, I mean, there's some Frank Miller inspiration for Batman versus Superman, but
you could see it in the suit.
But the Dark Knight Returns comic and the animated film had a better motive compared to Lex Luthor's motive of just go fight him. I want you to fight him.
I don't know
Jesse fucking Eisenberg.
Who thought like Lex Luthor should be the Joker? Because that's
that or Jar Jar Binks mixing with Roger Rabbit.
They wrote Lex Luthor on the top, and they're like, okay, Joker. We're going to do like a Heath Ledger Joker awkward thing.
I think that was more.
I was like, I got nothing against Jesse. We got nothing against Jesse Eisenberg.
I like. He's a good actor, Jesse Eisenberg.
You know, nothing. But
right.
Who made that decision and said, all right, this is going to be Lex Luthor. He's going to be awkward.
I think I was more worried about his casting more than Ben Affleck.
Like, had no one seen Clancy Brown's portrayal of
Billy Zane
of Lex Luthor, or I mean, fuck, even Gene Hackman, as corny as he was, still kind of nailed the essence of Lex Luthor.
Well, it makes Gene. Well, with Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, it makes Gene Hackman more serious than like.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's like somebody dropped the ball, or somebody was like, no, we gotta have this because this will represent this group. We gotta check these boxes and do all this stuff. They need to. Well, they won't stop doing that. But if they want people to pack in the movie theaters and actually give a damn about their films, they need to stop doing that.
I saw Batman versus.
At the long run, not only is that a good business decision, but it's also a good morally decision for the fans. I mean, look what they did to Star Wars. You know.
Yeah.
I kind of sort of like the first sequel, but the first sequel, in essence, was kind of a remake of New Hope.
When I first saw it in the theater, I liked it, but then after like more viewings, I don't have the same like hype for the same feel for it.
I love the expanded universe stuff for Star Wars. The fact that they relegated that to Legends, and the fact that
I'm guilty as a Star Wars fan.
Everything is on Kathleen Kennedy. I'm no defender of her. I hate her guts. I hate what she did to the franchise. But I know there's other people too.
I'm guilty for saying
this. I feel
this.
so bad for George that I don't know if you know the story behind her and George. That George was basically pressured into giving his company away. You know?
No, I don't know about that story. And also, I'm guilty that as a Star Wars fan.
Is Kathleen Kennedy basically pulled a Darth Sidious and was like whispering in his ear because George Lucas was still bummed out over people's reactions to the prequels. Right. Now, I like the prequels. I think they aged like wine.
It makes the prequels look better.
Yeah. I know people don't like the prequels. They're like, oh, the cheesy
I
writing and
I could
stuff.
take it or
I'm
leave
like,
with
that's
the
Star Wars.
prequels.
It's freaking Flash Gordon, man. Um,
Oh, true,
but
true. That's true.
but yeah, Kathleen Kennedy and others, I would have to assume, were basically whispering into his ear and saying, "Hey, you should give it to us. We'll make it better."
Right.
And that's what happened. Is she was basically like full on Darth Sidious and
Right.
he's like, give it to us. He's like just we will make it better.
Basically, he went to the
Good.
dark side. Disney's the dark side.
Seriously, Darth Disney, and I used to, and don't get me wrong, as a kid, I used to love Disney. I used to
So did I.
love Disney.
But in
But
recent
they
years,
went full red, full comedy,
yeah,
and it's
I
not,
could agree.
it's not good. But
No,
yeah,
if I watch Disney, I'll stick with the classics like
yeah, stick with the
like
classics, man.
Frozen.
There are
Frozen
films
just doesn't
like
do
I
it for me
had just
anymore.
recently watched Return to Oz. Do you remember Return to Oz?
I've never seen it.
It's a
I only know
really
about it.
good film, very very underrated, and for the Tim Burton fans out there, probably the inspiration for Jack Skellington. There's a character in that, well, in the story, because the movie came out in the 80s, but in the story
Right.
there was a character that not only looks like what Jack Skellington would become, but even shares the same name, Jack.
Right.
Jack Pumpkinhead. And he's got like the same kind of design, but it's a pumpkin. It's the same type of design, and that's like an homage to Wizard of Oz.
Nice.
And it's a great
I
film.
never
It's got
seen that film.
Piper Laurie in it as
Right.
a witch. I forget her name, Mummy or something. I forget.
Are you talking about that goth chick who was in The Craft?
No. Piper Laurie from Carrie, the
Oh
mother.
yeah, I know Piper Laurie, but I'm talking about like the '80s sequel to Oz, The Return, which I never knew existed until in recent events from the internet, finding out there was a sequel to Wizard of Oz.
Right,
With
I
that.
didn't know either. I had to look it up myself, and I was like, "Oh shit!" And
I
but
never would have
it's
guessed that there was a
totally-
sequel.
It's a totally different movie. Like if you're expecting like happy-go-lucky Wizard of Oz,
It's
that
not.
kind of stuff. This is like no, this is darker.
Yeah,
a little grittier,
actually-
but still really good and still very much Wizard of Oz.
I never read the books as a kid, but from what I've heard from James Rolfe on Cinemassacre, he said the books are very, very dark compared to the movie.
Similar to the Willy Wonka books.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it was kind of refreshing. It was like all right, this is different, but
Right.
it's still very much Wizard of Oz. As long as
But,
it
but then
keeps
again,
in
a
the
lot of the stuff Disney, like Snow White, is a much darker story compared to
Right.
what we saw.
Right. Could you imagine if they do a Grimm's fairy tale version of Snow White?
That really ruins everyone's childhood.
They wouldn't do it.
I guess no whistle while you work.
A matter of fact, did you hear about what Dinklage is coming out about?
No, what did it
Again,
come
I
out
don't mean
about?
to get into politics, but it's regarding the seven dwarves and how they're trying to race swap and get rid of the dwarves because it's offensive. Which meanwhile, this professional wrestler that suffers from dwarfism,
Right.
comes out and go, "What are you talking about? Like you're denying people work, and that's not cool."
Yeah.
And I totally agree.
Right, which I could
Like-
agree on that one.
It's like child actors, in a
True.
sense. Like you're gonna deny a child actor because you think it's like child labor laws or something, like abuse or something. I mean, there are
Right.
cases, but
True.
that's a whole nother thing. But yeah, Wizard of Oz, I would give Return to Oz for those who haven't seen it or feeling a little nostalgic. Check it out.
Right.
Um,
So anyway, that next thing I want to talk about is some, like I said, shows I've watched recently. I've rewatched a lot of Seinfeld, and I finished Family Matters, and I love well. I'm working on an essay for Lucy, so I watched a few I Love Lucy episodes to get the
Right.
feel for Lucy.
what have I been watching? A little bit of The Old Green Hornet, the
The
TV show
60s?
with Bruce Lee.
Okay. I only saw one
That's-
episode of that
that's
show.
pretty good. It's cheesy, but it's good.
I think I only saw the crossover that he had with Batman on the '60s show.
I've been watching a lot of. Well, she's done with it now, but my mom is actually a pretty big Star Trek fan. I actually
Really,
got
so is
her
my
into
mother.
Star Trek,
Really?
and my favorite is actually Deep Space Nine, and
I never
she
saw
had
it.
finished it like a couple weeks ago, or a couple months ago, and it like I've been watching that. I like that. And,
It's funny you say
I'm
that.
not a
I
Trekkie
watched.
by any means. I don't
Me neither.
like Star Trek the same way I like Star Wars.
I'm more of a Jedi than a Trekkie.
But I like me some Deep Space Nine, and I like me the original series. As cheesy as it is, as cheesy as
I did like Next.
Why don't you
I did like Next Generation. Though. That was pretty good.
That was the one I couldn't get into, but
Really?
yeah,
My mom loves Next
yeah,
Generation.
I tried.
That's her favorite Star
I couldn't get
Trek.
into that one, and I know
And
it's like
last.
I know Deep Space Nine is like an offshoot, but it's one of this kind of series where you can just watch on your own and you'd be like, okay, I can get pretty caught up.
Last night I watched an episode of the original Twilight Zone that Shatner was on, one where him and his wife, they're in some town, and like they're getting their car done. They just go to some like diner. I don't know if it was a diner or some coffee shop or something, and they're sitting there and they're playing with this like little thing where you put in like a nickel or a coin, it tells you the future, and he believes it.
That's pretty wow.
Oh yeah, nothing tops the original Twilight Zone. The newest one that came out.
The original Twilight Zone is one of my favorite series of the '60s.
The newest one, the newest one that came out with Jordan Peele was
Well, I know they remade it a couple times. Once in the 1990s, and then once recently.
Actually, the 80s.
1980s.
Yeah, there was an 80s Twilight Zone. Not just including the movie.
I remember it, but my heart will always belong to the original 60s Twilight Zone.
Right.
So many episodes are super relevant now, and they were. I know that Rod Serling had written a lot of the episodes himself, but there are a lot of episodes that still, from the 60s, mind you, that still stand the test of time. If you haven't,
they always will.
If you guys out there haven't seen it, or your grandparents or your parents talk about it, give it a watch. Don't let the black and white discourage you. I know people that don't like black and white.
Yeah.
Don't.
That's the sad part about this generation. They don't appreciate a black and white show or movie.
I know some people do. Some people do.
Some people.
But some people, like our friend Pete. Yeah, he's just like, I say, it's in black and white.
We'll have to try to persuade him more as best as we can. If not, then oh well, we tried.
Yeah. Yeah. What can you do? But yeah, Twilight Zone is always close to my heart. I love
black and white films for escapism and just that feel of feeling like I'm in a different world, a different time period.
Can you think of some of your favorite episodes? I can only think of a few off the top of my head.
I did like the other one with Shatner where he's on the plane.
Was it? I forget the name of the title, but
I can't remember the episode. I can remember the moments.
Yeah.
I also like the one with that little devilish kid.
Right.
Talking Tina was a good one.
Yeah.
That was
great.
That was the inspiration for Chucky, and I also like the one where the little girl lost who goes in like another dimension. That was a poltergeist.
Do you remember the one where a group of astronauts think they go to space? Like
no.
they plan to go to space, and they end up going to either a parallel Earth or what they think is another planet. Turns out to be Earth, and everybody's frozen.
Okay, no, I didn't see that one.
And they're just like, now I could be mixing up episodes, but I remember. I'm gonna spoil this for anybody who hasn't seen it.
Right.
I remember the twist being like...
Not to interrupt you, but I also like the one with Burgess Meredith where he's the last guy on Earth, and he thinks he can read all the books. Anyway,
there was another one he did too, where he was supposed to be executed. The last man he was supposed to be executed. And
I think he was the devil or something like that.
the last man who read her. I forget the name of the episode, but
Yeah.
he basically, I forget the twist, but it's one of those episodes where you, of course, like any all Twilight Zone episode, you have to watch until the end because the suspense is, for lack of a better term, nail biting. And Burgess
Right.
Meredith
Oh,
is Burgess
they
Meredith. I mean, come
that's what made the
on.
show so great. They had like such the best like twist endings. Even like
Yeah,
there's also another there's another one I like too is when this is an urban legend that goes back way back about like a woman who's like driving and she's a ghost in the end is the big twist.
right.
The hitchhiker is what it's
Right.
called.
Yes. Yes. And I remember another film also did that concept too. I think it was called
Carnival of Souls.
I don't
That's a
know if
great
they
movie.
if that came out first. I would have to look. No, no,
Carnival of Souls came out
was it
later.
50, 51 Carnival of Souls.
No, 62 Carnival of
62.
Souls. Yeah.
So it might have been around the same time because I know. I think the original Twilight Zone was 60. 60,
Actually,
61.
it came out in 59, but then the 60s is when it really got more mainstream
Right.
popularity.
It's
But
good to
still,
have you here.
this.
'Cause, my
Yeah, I'm
memory,
glad to
man.
be here.
My memory,
As much
man,
as I do
I
love
can't
this.
remember dates. I try to with a mental exercise.
I'm like an encyclopedia in some ways with all
Well,
this
that's
stuff.
why you're the best partner for this because you could keep up with me. Anybody else would be like, yeah, that thing, or yeah, whatever. But yeah,
Anyway, as much as I've enjoyed this, but it's been an hour already.
Yeah, Twilight Zone will always stand the test of time, and Outer Limits is another one.
I only saw one episode. I haven't seen
You
enough
need
of that
to
show.
because a couple episodes inspired or Terminator basically ripped off a couple episodes
Right.
of
Okay, I didn't know
Outer
that.
Limits. And that's one of the shows that also stands the test of time. But
You could even make the argument that Planet of the Apes is like a Twilight Zone twist ending.
kind of, sorta. I can
Sort
kind
of.
like
A 1
if
hour.
it was part of the Twilight Zone thing, I could see that movie being condensed in a Twilight Zone episode.
Even though like it's its own thing. It was written by Richard Matheson, who wrote a lot of Twilight Zone episodes.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I could definitely see it. Also, another Twilight Zone episode I really liked was there was an episode where a guy was supposed to get hanged. Some guy. And I forget what the episode was when the sky turns black. The title I'm trying to think of. And the moral of the story was basically don't listen to the mob. The mob is, they literally were
Right.
trying to lynch this guy, and he was supposedly a convicted murderer.
Right.
And it really showed the reflection of humanity. Same thing with there was an episode called Monsters on Second Street, or the Monsters of Second Street, where it was all about the murder of a little boy, and everybody was accusing everybody of something.
Right.
Oh, you killed this guy. Oh, you killed this. It's great. It's great.
Right.
I forget exactly the title, but for those that can find the original Twilight Zone, look it up. I'm sure you can correct me and give me the dates.
Last night, last time me and my dad watched an episode. It was about this old like World War II like German soldier. He goes back to the old like concentration camps, and he's haunted by the victims that he killed.
Right.
Which that was a really good episode.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. The show was really king when it came to.
They had a lot of those on the show.
When
like
it came to
post-World War II,
psychological horror, it was absolutely
Yes, and that was one of them.
fantastic in terms of encapsulating that. Also, there was an episode regarding a gambler. Do you remember the episode with the gambler?
I don't think I didn't see that one.
And that one's a good one. I forget the name of it.
I didn't see that one.
But it's kind of funny because the gambling machine at one point says like "play me" or something like that, and the guy can't stop, and he has no money, and it's a good one. But yeah, Twilight Zone will always stand the test of time. But in
Oh, it will.
terms of remakes, to go into remakes, some are good, but I'm never for them. I'm never
depends
for
on
remakes.
remakes.
I mean, there are rare exceptions, like John Carpenter's The Thing,
Yes,
the
the
80
Blob,
Blob,
the Invasion
uh,
of the Body Snatchers
the Body
remake was good.
Snatchers. You know, there
Well,
are some
even
rare exceptions, but I'm never for remakes. I mean, for Pete's sake, you know, they remade Carrie again.
I didn't like that.
Again!
I
After
didn't like
15 years?
something like that.
Like, not even
I
long,
didn't.
not even long by remake standards.
I have this idea for a video topic on my channel where I want to do like talk about horror films that did not need like sequel. Like I don't think Carrie needed a sequel, and also the remake
No,
with
Carrie
Chloe
did
Grace.
not need a sequel. The Rage, it
I
made
didn't like
no
that movie.
sense. It made no
No, it
sense.
didn't.
Because
It didn't even feel like a sequel to Carrie.
when would Carrie ever get pregnant in the
I
original
don't
film?
know.
When?
I don't know.
Without showing, without it makes no
Her
sense.
mother isolated her. She didn't even know. She probably didn't even know what like how where babies came from.
Yeah, that's impossible.
Yeah,
But
I wasn't a
it
fan
made
of the
no
remake with.
sense. But yeah, there are
I
those
saw- I
cash
s-
grab remakes and sequels that are just like this makes no
Yeah.
sense. Like
I
American
saw-
Psycho 2.
I didn't see that one.
I didn't see it. All I know is Mila Kunis is in it,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that's about it.
Yeah, that's
It's
all. I
gotta
never
be
seen
pretty
it.
bad.
I've
Now,
never
I could be
bothered
wrong. There
with
could
it.
be people that are like, I love that film.
I think
I don't know.
Shatner's in that film, if I'm not mistaken, but I could be wrong with that. Don't quote me on it.
I
And
have
also,
no idea. But you know,
in the Carrie remake with Chloe Grace Moretz and Julianne Moore was just like
yeah,
it was shot for shot. They didn't really not change much up to
Psycho.
it.
The Psycho remake
Don't
really
even get
didn't
me
need
started
to
on that
exist.
one.
I know probably there's people that are like, Vince Vaughn was pretty good. It was pretty good. I didn't mind it. They probably.
My turd is better than Vince Vaughn's is Psycho.
Yeah, it's and Anthony Perkins, even in the fourth like I've seen all the Psycho movies, all the sequels, and the fourth
I
one,
only saw parts of the sequels.
the fourth one isn't bad. It's a prequel, but it's
Yeah.
not bad. It's not bad at all.
Right,
Perkins is still Perkins,
right.
but he
I know
tells
that I know he's like telling the story from his point of
of
view
how
to
it
some
started.
like
Yeah, the fourth
Yeah,
one is really
and
good.
Olivia Hussey
it's
plays
got,
the mother.
what's her face from It, the English actor, English
Olivia
actress. Yeah.
Olivia Hussey was also in Black Christmas,
Right.
and she was
yeah,
also
I,
in.
yeah, I love Black Christmas. The original. The original.
I
Black
love the
Christmas.
original.
Oh my god.
You know, that's
what
another thing. If you want
what
to talk
a-
remakes, people seem to like the '06 remake. I thought that film was a turd. It was like really the worst
Well,
thing I ever.
I mean, I'm guilty of liking. I like the Rob Zombie Halloweens,
That's okay.
but that's my take. You know,
And I
like
didn't bother with the.
They were a lot
I didn't-
better. They were a lot better than Michael Myers. You know, getting beat up by Busta Rhymes. You know,
Trick or
trick or
treat,
treat, motherfucker. It was like, you know, what? What the?
That can go either way for me.
Yeah, it's bad. Also, on the subject of Halloween, what do you think about the remake like the retcon of all the sequels? What do you think?
I only saw the 20. I still have not seen Halloween Kills yet.
Yeah, I skipped that one. I was personally checked out after
Okay.
the first remake. I was like, how old? Like, they actually make that a joke too in the movie. It's like,
In
how
some
old
ways.
is Michael gonna be before we get Michael Myers in Walker or with I want Michael Myers with arthritis, right? I want him like having difficulty stabbing
be
people
like-
because his hands hurt or they're
It'd be
crippled or
like-
he's got the claw thing going on.
It'd be like in Living Color when Jim Carrey did a spoof with the Star Trek when they were older, where he's using a walker and
Yeah,
and
I
Spock
might-
has bowel
like,
movements.
If I ever become a horror director myself, I might do that as like a horror comedy, like ancient like serial killers that have been trying to kill people when they're old. But the thing
Right.
is, they're so old that they're trying to kill them with walkers, but they can't keep up. You know, they have these young people running, and they're just like,
Right.
where are they? You know, why am I still running? You know, you have these old people with walkers, and
That's,
I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna kill you.
I mean, what, what I mean, what is it going to be?
I would watch that.
What I don't understand is when Halloween 2018 came out, why did they have to call it? Couldn't they have called it like Halloween 40 years later or something, or Halloween?
Yeah, I miss subtitles myself, but I think
Yeah.
that's down to like we
I
want
mean,
to forget that they're sequels, or
what's
I don't
next?
know.
Halloween.
Like
What's next? Halloween 2038.
I'm such a cynic that I truly believe that all these remakes and sequels are just so we forget, or they make it harder to find the originals.
That's
And they're
true.
just like, no, this is the new. You have to like this new thing. You have to like it because we say, you know. But I'm such a cynic. People might disagree, but that's my personal.
Well, the original Mate had such an impact to me as a little kid. Like, it
Yeah,
really made me afraid of horror films, and then
yeah.
eventually it
And
made me a horror fan.
honestly, I'm gonna have an unpopular opinion as well when it comes to Halloween. I like Halloween 3. I like it.
That's okay.
I
I don't
like
like
it.
Halloween 3
I
that much.
understood what it was trying to do. The Tales from the Crypt anthology thing. I thought that was a really cool idea. I liked I liked the idea of the Halloween masks and the whole killing of,
Yeah.
you know, kids and stuff.
I know that in the 2018 there's a reference to those masks.
Right. And I like that
Yeah.
idea, you know. But I know people are like,
If
it's got no
be,
Michael
be,
Myers, therefore it's not a Halloween movie.
being a diehard Michael Myers fan that I am, when I was watching the first time of 2018
Oh
Halloween, I
yeah,
said
I remember when I discovered it as a
there's
kid.
tons of like references to the series, like H2O, Halloween
Right.
5, Halloween 4, and a little bit of Halloween 3,
Right.
and yeah, you can like literally like keep a scorecard, like, oh wait a minute, that's a reference to Halloween 6, Halloween 5, Halloween.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's kind of what I do with Rob Zombie movies, is because I don't know if you've noticed, he always physically reference some other sci-fi or horror movie. So
Well,
I
let's see.
look at
I've
his
only
sets
seen.
and I go, okay, in this room we have a poster for Creature from the Black Lagoon. We have
Right,
a Halloween poster. We've got a Chucky doll. We've got, you know, what all this stuff from the time period, you know, from the 1970s time period. You
right,
know, and it's kind of a fun thing to do,
right.
for me. But you know, um, on the flip side of that, um, one thing I have a problem with modern Hollywood, at least. I don't like referential humor.
Right.
You know, and it's weird because I just kind of contradict myself here, but whenever somebody's like, it's like that thing from that movie, unless you're Clerks,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know, it
Clerks is
becomes
different though.
tiresome to do that. We're well aware that you know that this has been done before in the previous
True.
decade. Stop
Yeah.
doing that, and
Well, I think
that's
the
the
difference is
problem.
Clerks. With
That's the
Clerks, there weren't like as much like sequels to Star Wars or other films at that
right.
time.
That's the that's the problem I have with modern day action films too. Is
Right.
because in order to make a like an 80s style action film, you can't be self-aware. You can't go full Quentin Tarantino and be self-aware.
Right.
You have to be unironic. No, this is the situation. That's how you do you know, a decent action film. You know, good writing
True.
too. But you
Yes.
can't be like, oh, it's like that movie. You know, Five Finger Death Punch. You can't go Seth MacFarlane and be like, remember the thing, guys? Remember the
if
time? I hate that.
well
I
actually
hate
well
that.
actually well if here's one thing, if it's funny you say that, and like I think it was either in Captain America Civil War and one of the Avengers sequels with Spider-Man, and he makes like reference, like, did you ever see like Star Wars or I
Right.
remember he says, have you ever seen this old movie Aliens? And like I like the look that Tony Stark gives him, like, are you referring to me as old?
Yeah.
Because like
Yeah.
Tony Stark's
I
older
mean,
than.
for Spider-Man, it kind of makes sense because
Well, that's true, yeah.
he's always referencing something. Even in the comics, he's like that's like the alligators in New York City. Like that makes sense in character, but
Right.
I mean, in terms of like the modern trope of It's like that movie, blah blah blah, all that stuff.
Put it this way: Deadpool's like one breaking the fourth wall and pointing out all these.
Yeah, but that also makes sense in the
Yes,
characters thing. He's always doing that.
right. Well,
Um,
that's just lazy writing.
yeah, it's just lazy writing. Yeah, but yeah, but like I see this in every movie, especially movies that try to pay homage to the '80s, like
Yeah,
Stranger Things. Like I know people like Stranger Things,
I
and
love
I
Stranger
watched it for a
Things.
spell. Don't get me wrong, I liked it, but I
I'm
clocked out.
excited. I'm excited for the new one because when I remember after the way the third, it's funny. I look back at the way the third season ending. I kind of like laugh at myself thinking the way it ended, where like the character 11 and like Hopper supposedly, well, what we're gonna see, he's probably alive still. But anyway, here's my
Right,
point. What's her name? Winona Ryder's character. They end up moving to a new state because of it was economics at the time, Reaganomics. They could not. She lost her job. They moved into a new town, new place because of new job opportunities. And I'm thinking, oh my God, look what just happened to me. I just moved recently. Who knew at that time that I was going to be moving myself?
right, yeah,
But then also during they were filming it the fourth season, but then COVID happened. It postponed filming, and
yeah.
I've had
Well,
to wait
that's the
two
thing
years for it.
too. Is anything coming from Hollywood, like Top Gun is the sequel to Top Gun is taking forever. My dad, who is a huge Top Gun fan, gave up. He just gave up on it. He was like, I don't care when it comes out anymore.
I think
I
because
just don't
the
care.
thing is, Tom Cruise's reputation of being the big mega blockbuster that he is, he would rather have the film come out in the movie theaters than streaming services. Is
Yeah, but
why
the thing about movie theaters is they're dying. They're going the way of malls. Yeah,
COVID.
yeah, COVID, but also streaming. Streaming, even if COVID didn't exist, I think streaming would have been like, why am I gonna pay 40 to 50 bucks to see a movie I can either watch for free or less?
Yeah,
I could buy
it's
my own popcorn candy, sit on my comfy couch, and watch
right,
the new Avengers film or whatever.
right. It's just a bummer because the movie theater was always my go-to escapism place from like my personal life
Yeah,
and problems
I
and
loved going to the movie theater. Matter of fact, I forgot to share a story about the first time I saw one of the Star Wars sequels. Um, I think it was Force Awakens. It was the Force Awakens. I went to
right.
go say. I wish you were there. I wish you were
I
there.
saw
I went to
I
go.
saw a midnight showing,
Well,
Force Awakens.
that's what I was going to talk about. I went to go see it with my buddy Evan, and my buddy Evan is a huge Star Wars fan,
Right,
and I had never been to a midnight showing.
right. That was
It
my
was the
first
first
midnight
time,
showing too.
and let me tell you, the crowd was awesome. You had Star
Yeah,
Wars fans dressed up, young, old, 30, 40, whatever
actually,
age
it's
bracket,
it's
every age bracket you can imagine, and it was like
it's
a
funny.
rock concert. The crowd, when
Yeah,
that first note hit of that beat, you heard it.
yeah.
You heard
People were cheering,
like
applauding.
it was the like it like the movie was okay. Movie was alright. But the
Yeah,
experience of the crowd and being it with young and old, it was a rock concert. We
right.
hadn't seen a Star Wars film since the prequels at that time. And
You know,
we
I
were
thought
like
after
waiting.
Revenge of the Sith, I'm thinking, I guess no more Star Wars films. Then a decade later, Disney bought Star Wars, and then we
Yeah.
had
And
the sequel
I
trilogy.
remember when the sequels were coming out, I was a little torn. I was a little torn.
Right.
I was like, it's like they could be good, but what else can they do? It's done. It's over. You know.
Yeah, at the time I was a little bit excited, but then looking back, I
Same
kind
thing.
of
Same
realized
thing
how
with
like
the
the
Matrix. It's done.
I
It's
feel like
over.
the sequel trilogy was just like rehashing what was already done already, rather than like its own
Right.
ideas.
Right. Same thing with the Matrix. It was
Yeah,
it
but
was
like I
kind
said,
of
yeah, the
rehashing,
going to
remaking.
see it, going to see a midnight showing of the Force Awakens was fun and an awesome experience. Like yeah, like you said, people were dressed up. Well, here's a funny story. I remember when we were like waiting outside for the new Star Wars film, hung out, we chill, we talked, and I
Right.
remember also there was this girl dressed as Jabba the Hutt. She got kicked out of the movie theater because at that time it goes back to the Dark Knight Rises with the whole shootout
Oh,
in
because she had a
Colorado.
gun.
No,
She
she
had
didn't have
like
a
a
gun.
fake
No, she
gun.
didn't. No, she didn't have a fake gun at all. It was just a rule and restriction at Lowe's Island 16. No, at
That's really
Lowe's Theater.
weird.
No,
That's
she didn't have any
that's really
weapons on
weird.
her. They just would not let her wear the Jabba suit because of the restrictions of the.
Yeah. But movie theaters have always been kind of weird. I remember I went to go see Spy with Melissa McCarthy. I went to go
Right.
see it with again my friend Evan, and I had no hopes. I was like, all right, I'll go see it. And he wants to go see it.
That
Sure,
was
we'll go
actually a
see
funny
it.
movie, Spy.
And I didn't get into it. I didn't like it, and
That's
I
okay.
walked out like 5 minutes into the film,
Okay.
and I was like, can I have my money back? You know, and they're like, it was like, no, you were in there for 5 minutes. I was like, I was in there for
Damn.
5 minutes. I said less than 5 minutes. I said
It sounds like a
I got
Curb
the
Your
previews. I'm
Enthusiasm
like, can you give
episode.
me my money back? And they're like, no. I'm like, so they took my money for absolutely no reason. So movie theaters have been kind of stuff. But I've always one of the pipe dreams I've always wanted to do with somebody, just as a novelty, because I never been to one, and I always thought it was like a really romantic thing to do. I always wanted to take a date to a drive-in movie theater.
Actually, it's funny you say that. That girl I dated a while ago, we talked about. I live upstate now. There's a drive-in movie theater around where I live, and
I know there's one. There's one pretty far from where I live, but it's always kind of been a pipe dream. It always kind of
when I my local gym I used to work out at, I remember this like senior citizen used to tell me when he was like in his a teenager in his 20s, he used to take like a girl to the movie theater to see a horror film. That was the way you would get she would kiss you.
well
Like
that
telling you
that's
old
something
stories
I
like
would
that.
do. Is like I would
Yeah,
go.
same.
I would if they were playing like an old horror film. I would love to take a
Yeah,
date there, and even if it was a cheese, I would love if it was like a cheesy monster flick, because then we
right,
could laugh at how bad the effects are.
right.
But if it's a horror film, if she likes horror films,
Well,
that's even better.
I once watched like 50s like B movies in my family room one time of like just and it was just like all random. I didn't like have any particular
Yeah, like
like
Invasion of the Bee Girls and stuff like
yeah, or
that.
the Screaming Skull or
Yeah, all
I
those
just picked
public domain. I actually have a couple box sets of
yeah
those because
the Wasp Woman's not too
they're
bad.
public domain. Oh, funny story. Well, it's not really a story. It's just a funny little thing. I own about unintentionally because the movie itself is public domain. I own, I think, three, maybe four copies of Night of the Living Dead
Well,
because
that's a
it's
public
public
domain film
domain.
anyway. I think I own two copies of it or because I have the
Because
Blu-ray is really great.
my parents would buy me these public domain horror collections, and
Yeah, yeah,
Night of the Living Dead would always be on
right.
those collections. So I have got like
I
several
worked three
collections
years ago. I worked on an
with
indie
that.
film as a boom operator, and one of the actors I worked with knew Dwayne Jones very very well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, she said that he was a very like, because at the end of his life before he passed away, he was teaching acting classes on Long Island as an acting teacher somewhere in Westbury College,
Yeah,
and she said that originally Night of the Living Dead was supposed to have like a distribution, but the
right.
label fell off, and that's how it ended up in the public domain.
Yeah, and that film Night of the Living Dead is another like pioneer of so many different, very important film for the horror genre and film in general.
Yes,
It was one
yes,
of the first to have an African American or black
yeah.
lead, and that was like taboo at the time.
The first time I saw, I said to myself, "This had to have been revolutionized, even if you're not the biggest
Yeah,
history buff." But I
and
do know and understand that time period.
for the time, obviously not now because we have all these special effects and so many films are much more gory and bloody now. But for the
Right.
time, it was probably the one of the bloodiest. Well,
Yes.
next to like Blood Feast from that Italian director in the '60s. I forget his
Well, you know what
name.
it was. I think like films outside of the U.S. were more on the gore side, whereas
Well,
like
yeah,
U.S. were more censored.
Italiano. Italian films were known, especially Italian zombie films, were known to be
Yeah,
super, super bloody and super, super gory. Like
they
The
were.
Beyond had a scene where a guy's tongue got ripped out by a group
Yeah.
of spiders and like
In foreign countries of films, they're like there's like no like restrictions of
yeah.
what they can and
I
cannot
mean, in
do.
terms of effects, they had probably the best gore effects.
Yeah.
Some of the best gore effects.
Because I've even seen like all like black and white like foreign films from like outside like using gore or even like
Yeah,
showing nudity. It's like wait a minute, this was the Hays Codes era, and yet there was
Yeah,
nudity or gore in it, but
yeah.
again, they
Well,
were not restriction at that
think of
time.
the '40s. You know, they had noir and a lot of the Hays Code, so they had to imply everything.
Yeah, true,
Yeah.
true, true.
But getting back to Night of the Living Dead and its importance, that film at the time was probably, I would imagine, for 1960s America, probably the most terrifying and bloody film they've ever seen.
Yeah.
You know,
Also, like a really like shocking film for like what its
it
political
definitely
views and message
pioneered the
was.
zombie genre.
It's what made the zombie genre like the way it is today.
Yeah,
Because I mean, there
I
were.
mean,
It's not the first.
White Zombie you can argue, but it really made it
Well, I mean, it wasn't the
mainstream.
first zombie film. It was more like the first like flesh-eating zombie because zombies were more like hypnotized
Yeah, hypnotized, kind
or
of
like walked to the zombie, but by the Val
Doctor of
Lawton part.
Caligari, kind of.
Yes, that's too. Yeah, yeah. That was the first time you ever saw like zombies that were like flesh eaters and like there was no answer on like why was this like happening? Like why are they becoming zombies? Is the horror like explanation is what made it scary.
Right.
And
Yeah,
also you have like, and you
exactly.
also have like also like where you have like these characters. Even though I'm not the biggest zombie fanatic, George Romero's I think were the best zombie film because of the human dynamics in those
Yeah,
films.
well, that's the thing. I also agree. I love the original Night of the Living Dead trilogy.
Yes,
Um,
Day of the Dead like really I was like really like super into that. I like love
yeah,
that
I
film to
love Day
death.
of the Dead. I love Dawn of the Dead as well. I thought that was great as well.
But
And
it's hard for me to pick which one I like the best because like Day of the Dead is just so awesome and
yeah, yeah,
like
you have Captain Rhodes, one of my
oh he was a piece of
favorite
shit that
characters,
guy.
stole the show for that movie.
Because I
Stole it.
think what I liked about it is that they're underground. It just shows that you're not even safe with the army during this like
Yeah, and
apocalypse.
the army guy is out of his mind. But
Yes.
uh, uh, what else? But yeah, it says a lot about Romero's films. And considering I'm not the biggest zombie fan, I actually think, and I know you can agree with me on this, zombies as a genre is probably the most overused genre in horror,
Yes.
in
I
video games,
agree.
in everything. Everything has a zombie something,
The Walking Dead
and
is
it's
actually
like they're like the, I wouldn't say the werewolves, but they're so commonplace that it makes the concept so boring. You know?
if I had to choose, believe it or not, I like werewolf movies
Yeah,
more
I
than
do too.
zombie
I
films. Like
prefer werewolves or vampires if they're done
that
right.
too, yeah. Like
You
I
know,
love Dog
No
Soldiers.
Twilight
Ugh,
Sparkle bullshit. You
no,
know,
fuck
don't
what the
get
the
us
Lost
back to the
Boys.
Hammer era, please. I would
Yes,
like to go
Christopher
back to
Lee.
the Hammer era. Which, by the way, Christopher Lee, I told you a little bit about Christopher Lee, but again, for the audience,
Go
Christopher
ahead.
Lee, man, he did the Dracula films in every language imaginable overseas. He spoke basically most every language, I think. I'm like 99% sure he spoke very good Italian, French, whatever. He
Right,
did all the dubs for that. He was also a World War II vet.
right.
You know, he fought for a country and he was part of this whole. He was basically the real life James Bond. He was part of
Yeah,
this whole society of actors that were basically portraying Nazi camps and like assassinating Nazis and
right.
stuff. But yeah, Lee will always be a legend, and even towards the end of his life, went on to do a metal, a symphonic metal album.
In the future, I want to
Charlemagne.
do
If you guys haven't heard of it,
in the
check it out. It's awesome.
in the future, I want to do like a Hammer like
Oh
podcast
yeah,
on
I
like
would
all the
love to join
films
you
and
on that. Now that we
yes,
figured out how to do this, definitely we
yeah,
can join. I'd love for this to
yes.
be maybe not a weekly thing, but
Maybe like once
whatever
a
you
month.
guys
I would
want to
say
do.
weekly.
Whatever whenever you feel like doing it, whenever I'm up to doing it. So
Right. I wouldn't
yeah,
mind doing one next month for like
next month. Yeah,
February.
definitely next
Yeah.
month, definitely.
And I've
Um,
enjoyed doing this, but I have to get going since I'm getting kind of
yeah,
hungry. We're gonna
yeah.
have dinner
I
soon.
think it's a good time to end this.
Yeah.
I we've
But
been
this was
going
fun.
for like
Thanks for
two
having me along.
hours. I think this is a
Yeah.
2 hour stream. But anyway, uh, great having you on, John.
Thanks.
I'm
Thanks for
so
having
glad
me.
we
And
can finally do this. For
yes,
those of you guys out there, this has been Wolfman Sam. This is officially the first episode of what I like to call the Children of the Night, Creatures of the Night podcast.
I love that title.
All right. I'll catch you guys later.
Talk to you later, man. Bye-bye.